She slammed her fist on my cabin door so hard the wood shook, then pointed at my wife and yelled, "You can't stay here! This is HOA property." Before I could even say a word, she was already on the phone with 911, screaming loud enough for the whole street to hear. "There's a trespasser. A dangerous woman breaking into my community." My wife stood there with her suitcase, calm but furious, her jaw tightening with every lie Karen spat. It was our land, our cabin, paid off fair and square. Yet this woman stood here acting like she owned the whole mountain. I tried to reason with her, but she cut me off, waving her fake HOA papers in my face. "I have authority here." "You don't belong!" Neighbors started peeking out their windows. Phones recording, whispers spreading. The sound of distant sirens crawled closer, and Karen's grin widened like she'd already won. My wife didn't flinch, though. She just slipped her hand inside her jacket pocket, her eyes narrowing on Karen with a patience that almost scared me. When the police car pulled up, Karen ran toward it, pointing at us dramatically like she was the victim. "Arrest them! They broke into my cabin!" The officer hesitated, glancing between us and her, unsure who to believe. Karen's voice cracked with fake tears as she pressed her story harder. "She's dangerous. She doesn't belong here." My wife finally stepped forward, slow and steady, pulling something from her jacket. Karen froze mid-sentence, her face draining pale. It wasn't a weapon. It was a card. A small piece of plastic that suddenly made the whole street silent. She held it up, her voice cold but calm. "United States Military Police." "Who exactly are you calling a trespasser?" The officer's eyes widened as he leaned closer to my wife's ID, and his whole tone shifted. "Ma'am, you served?" he asked carefully, almost like he already regretted stepping out of the car. Karen, on the other hand, started stuttering, her hands flapping in the air as she tried to spin it around. That doesn't matter. She's lying. That's probably fake." Her voice cracked, and the neighbors began whispering louder, some even recording every second. My wife didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She slid another card from her pocket, this time a Department of Defense clearance badge, and looked straight at the officer. "Everything I carry is verified. Now, before you decide who belongs here, maybe you should ask why she's trespassing on our land with fake HOA documents." The officer's jaw tightened. He turned toward Karen, asking for proof of her authority. That's when things started falling apart. Karen shuffled through her folder, pulling out crumpled sheets of paper that looked like they had been printed off Google. "Here, this is an official notice." The officer took one glance and shook his head. "This isn't even signed. This isn't legal." Karen's face turned red, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. "You don't understand. I run this neighborhood. These people, they don't belong here. They're dangerous." The neighbors gasped. A few even shouted back at her. "That's their cabin, Karen. You've gone too far." But she ignored them, her eyes locked on my wife, like she was trying to intimidate her into silence. My wife stepped closer, lowering her voice so only Karen and the officer could hear. "You're digging yourself into a hole you won't climb out of." "Do you really want to keep going?" Karen's hands trembled, but her pride wouldn't let her stop. She pointed straight at my wife again, her voice breaking with desperation. "I don't care who she says she is. If you don't arrest her, I'll call my own people." The officer frowned. "Your own people? What does that mean?" Karen smirked through her panic. "Let's just say I know cops who don't ask questions." The crowd went silent. Even the officer stiffened, and my wife's eyes narrowed because she knew exactly what that meant. Before I could even react, Karen stepped back and pulled out her phone, dialing fast with shaking fingers. "You'll see," she muttered, her voice rising again. "Real officers will be here any minute, and then you two will be out of this place for good." The neighbors murmured nervously, unsure if she was bluffing or not. My wife didn't move, didn't flinch. She just crossed her arms and waited, her military ID still glinting under the porch light. 10 minutes later, another car rolled up, an old black sedan with no police markings. Two men stepped out wearing cheap uniforms, badges clipped to their belts. They didn't look like officers. They looked like trouble. Karen's face lit up with a twisted kind of victory as she waved at them. "Over here! Arrest them now! This is my property!" The real officer stiffened, his hand brushing against his holster. "Identify yourselves," he demanded. But the two men ignored him and started walking toward us. cracking their knuckles like they were ready for a fight. One of them sneered, "You heard the lady. Pack your bags." The crowd gasped. Phones went higher in the air, recording everything. Karen smirked, whispering just loud enough for everyone to hear. "See? I told you I have friends." But the mistake she made was underestimating my wife. My wife stepped forward, standing between me and the two imposters. Her voice was calm, sharp, and commanding. "Uniform fraud. Badge fraud. Impersonating law enforcement. I suggest you back off before this becomes a federal offense." The men hesitated, clearly not expecting her to know the exact charges. One of them muttered, "She's bluffing." That's when my wife reached into her pocket again. Not for an ID this time, but for a small device she'd been carrying since her service. She clicked it once and a red light blinked. The crowd hushed. "You're on federal record now," she said coldly. "Every second of this is being logged and transmitted." Karen's fake cops froze, glancing at each other, their confidence draining fast. The real officer pulled his radio, already calling for backup. Karen's grin finally faltered as her voice cracked. "Wait, no, this isn't what it looks like." But it was too late. Everyone had seen. Karen's whole act started to unravel. The moment the real backup sirens wailed in the distance. The fake cops panicked first, muttering curses under their breath as they tried to step away. But the real officer barked, "Stay right where you are." His hand rested firm on his weapon now, no hesitation left. The neighbors leaned closer, phones pointed, recording every shaky move Karen made. Karen's voice turned shrill. "This is a misunderstanding. They work for me. I was just making sure these intruders don't steal from our community." But nobody was buying it anymore. One of the fake officers blurted out, "Lady, you didn't say she was military." Karen spun toward him, hissing through her teeth, "Shut up!" My wife didn't say a word. She didn't have to. The red light on her device kept blinking, and she kept her eyes locked on Karen like a predator waiting for the right moment. When the second squad car screeched up, two more real officers jumped out, instantly recognizing the situation. Within seconds, the fake cops were being frisked and shoved against the hood of the sedan. The lead officer turned to Karen. "Ma'am, step over here. We need to ask you some questions." Karen's pride wouldn't let her stop. Even with her so-called allies in handcuffs, she lifted her chin and spat, "You don't get it. I own this neighborhood. They don't belong here. She's just flashing some card to scare you. Arrest her! Arrest both of them!" Her voice cracked on the last words, her desperation seeping through. That's when my wife finally broke her silence. She stepped forward, her voice calm but loud enough for every neighbor to hear. "We built this cabin. We own this land. We paid for it in full. I have every deed, every document, every record." She pulled a folded packet from her bag and handed it to the officer. The papers were official, notarized, irrefutable. The officer scanned them quickly, nodding. Then my wife turned to the crowd. Her voice dropped lower, steady, sharp. "And while I served this country, while I fought to protect freedoms, she was out here pretending to be the law, terrorizing families like us." The crowd erupted, some clapping, some shouting, "Shame!" toward Karen. Karen's face twisted, red and trembling, her hands shaking as she shouted over them. "No, this is my neighborhood. You can't just walk in and take over. I make the rules here." But her words didn't matter anymore. The cameras were rolling. The truth was out. And for the first time, Karen looked like she realized she wasn't untouchable. Karen's voice cracked into a scream as the officers closed in. "You can't do this to me. I'm the one protecting this community." But her protests were drowned out by the sound of cuffs snapping tight. Around her wrists, the neighbors, who had spent months whispering about her bullying and fake notices, finally had proof in front of their eyes. Phones captured every second, her red face, her frantic denials, her arms pulled behind her back as she kicked at the dirt. The fake cops were already in the back of a squad car, their phony badges bagged as evidence. One officer read Karen her rights, but she kept yelling, twisting her words into something pathetic. "I was only trying to keep order. I was only doing my job." The crowd laughed bitterly. Someone shouted, "Your job is over, Karen!" And the entire street erupted with cheers. The lead officer turned to my wife, his tone respectful now. "Ma'am, thank you for your service, and for handling this situation better than most would have." My wife gave a faint nod, sliding her badge and papers back into her jacket. She didn't smile, but the calm on her face told me she had been waiting for this moment to expose Karen's lies in front of everyone. Karen, on the other hand, was shaking violently, her voice hoarse. "You'll regret this, all of you!" But her threats fell flat against the roar of relief from the neighbors. For the first time, the entire street felt free of her grip. Kids peeked out from behind their parents, smiling for once, no longer afraid of the woman who claimed to control everything. As the patrol cars pulled away, my wife slipped her arm around me, her voice low but firm. "I didn't fight for this country to be told I can't live in my own home." The words hit everyone watching, a line that carried weight heavier than anything Karen could ever say. And when the dust settled, the cabin, our cabin, felt different, safer, stronger, like it had been defended not just from an HOA bully, but from a fake authority that thought it could silence us. Karen was gone, her power shattered, her name forever tied to the footage spreading online. Justice wasn't loud or flashy in the end. It was simple. She tried to ruin us, and instead she destroyed herself.